Speaker, and I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise in opposition to the resolution. But before I go into that part, I was thinking, today isn't as much about, it doesn't feel like it's a day that we're debating chickens and bats. It feels strangely like Groundhog Day. We're doing this over and over again. But anyway, thank you, and I rise in opposition to the resolution. Like the one we just saw, this resolution doesn't do anything the American people have asked for. In my 20 years in Congress, no constituent has ever asked me what are we doing to put the northern long-eared bat on the brink of extinction. I suspect I'm not alone. So that raises a question. If the Republicans aren't answering to the American people with these absurd resolutions, who are they answering to? Unfortunately, the answer is the same as it was since the beginning of this Congress. And nowhere is the answer clearer than on the Natural Resources Committee, where we see countless hearings and bills just like this one that attack Endangered Species Act and our other fundamental environmental protections like the National Environmental Policy Act. To put it simply, the GOP's environment and energy agenda is designed for one constituency, and the one constituency only, the polluting industry. If you have any doubts, let's just do a brief recap. Starting back in January, after they finally finished the 15 votes it took to elect a speaker, the Republican majority wasted no time in getting H.R. 21, their first and apparently last open rule bill, to the floor. That bill was a shameless giveaway of our public lands to big oil. And despite the fact that they already have millions of acres of leases and they don't even use them, it was still a first important bill for the Republican majority. Next, we had H.R. 1, fittingly dubbed the Polluters Over People Act. The bill number H.R. 1 is typically reserved for the majority party's most important and visionary piece of legislation. In this case, it seemed the GOP's vision for America is a desperate and deliberate attempt to give oil, gas, and mining companies every handout and every loophole they can dream up. H.R. 1 lowered royalty rates, repealed interest fees, reinstated non-competitive leasing, weakened public health and safety guardrails, and of course, systematically gutted NEPA. Given the bill's unpopularity and the grim outlook anywhere beyond this extremist House majority, Republicans decided that the only way to pass it would be to hold the American people hostage with their MAGA manufactured debt ceiling crisis and make the Polluters Over People Act part of that ransom note. Unfortunately for all of us, that wasn't the end of the pro-polluter crusade. Industry's favorite GOP enablers had already signaled that they're planning to use the next must-pass legislation opportunity that they have, likely our appropriation bills and the next hostage situation. I guess the policy agenda that only polluters want isn't something you can pass through regular order in this House, which brings us back to where we are today. These resolutions attack the Endangered Species Act, one of the country's most beloved and successful environmental laws. In the 50 years since it was signed into law, the ESA has protected 99% of listed species from extinction. And no time is more important than now while we're facing the compounding crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss. We should be strengthening and supporting ESA science and implementation and not pecking at it in order to destroy ESA. Let me, and before we go further, we heard from the Republicans in the previous debate about how it's hurting energy and big oil. We've heard a lot from my colleagues about how the lesser prairie chicken and northern long-eared bat are supposedly hurting oil and gas development. So I want to take a moment to assure my Republican colleagues that they don't need to worry about big oil. Last year, the top oil companies, BP, Chevron, Ecuador, ExxonMobil, Shell, and Total Energies more than doubled their profits from 2021. Combined, these companies raked in $219 billion in just profits. That's not revenue, it's just profits. And this windfall of cash allowed these companies to pay out a record $110 billion in dividend buybacks to investors and CEO bonuses. Needless to say, big oil is doing okay. The chicken and the bat are not a threat to them, and any crocodile tears about their dire circumstances are just that. Let's remember we work for the American people and not these industry polluters. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserve.